Watcher to 6 actual. Target is in the main house. You have execute authority.
Bravo 6. Going dark.
How's it going, troops? Jordan here, back again with another Modern Warfare loadout video. Today's loadout is one I've seen mentioned quite a lot in the comments on these videos, and this class setup will be based on the former Afghan army before the Taliban took over the country. So let's make way for the Middle East as we join Afghanistan's new recruits in Modern Warfare multiplayer. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up and hit subscribe, and without further ado, let's take a look at our mission briefing. This is going to be a military class setup based on Afghanistan's national army. We're going to train ourselves for battle by learning tactics from our American friends as we prepare for the front line. And in order to defend the front line, we're going to use a mixture of local firearms and NATO weaponry to help bring an end to the war. The Afghan National Army traces its roots back to the early 18th century, when the Hotak dynasty rose to power in Kandahar in 1722. Since then, the presence of the Royal Afghan Army continued growing, with the formation of the Durrani Empire in 1747 and the constant battles in the Punjab region of India throughout the 19th century. Across the 19th and early 20th centuries, Afghanistan had been a constant battleground, with the Royal Afghan Army and the British and East Indian Company forces clashing in what became known as the First, Second and Third Anglo-Afghan Wars. The Third Anglo-Afghan War ended in armistice in the same year that it started, 1919, after Afghan fighters and tribal chiefs fought against the British occupation under the rule of then Afghan King Amanullah Khan. This armistice was called the Treaty of Rawalpindi and granted independence to Afghanistan with no further occupation from the British Raj. Skipping forward into the 1960s, and the Soviet Union saw an interest in the Afghan army and invested finances, resources and time into training Afghan soldiers and arming them with Soviet weaponry. In the early 70s, Soviet military assistance increased significantly, and by 1978, the number of Soviet military specialists increased by 3,500. Suddenly, less than a year later, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan and established communism through the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, or PDPA. This brings us to the 1980s, where the fate of Afghanistan laid in the hands of three factions: the Afghan army fighting for the DRA, the Soviet army, and a group of Islamist rebels commonly known as the Mujahideen. By the end of the Soviet-Afghan War, the Soviets left Afghanistan, and the Mujahideen claimed victory over the conflict, while the Afghan army failed to fight off Mujahideen rebels and keep Soviet forces back. The Mujahideen spent the years after seizing territory, while the Afghan army was on the brink of collapse. From 1996 to 2001, the Taliban took control of Afghanistan, until the United States intervened in their invasion of the country, and reinstated the Afghan army back in their position, under a new name of Afghan National Army. The soldiers of the ANA spent roughly 4 years in both military training and civil training, under the supervision of American and British forces, who also helped to fund the National Military Academy of Afghanistan and their courses. Since 2002, the Afghan National Army had been fighting off the Taliban and defending the country against other unwanted threats for almost 20 years, that is until 2021. As thousands of US troops were pulled out of Afghanistan back in May this year, the Taliban saw this as an opportunity to strike on its prey. In August of 2021, the Afghan armed forces rapidly disintegrated as the Taliban took full control of the country's military. The Taliban claim this is a new start for them and the country of Afghanistan, but the real question begs, will we see yet another war lasting decades in this region? Only time will tell. Despite this takeover though, this loadout will still be based on the Afghan National Army prior to recent events. So let's begin by taking a look at our primary weapon that we're going to be equipping. The Afghan army used a variety of American and Russian weaponry in their arsenal. Some of these weapons included M16s, M4 carbines and Dragunov sniper rifles. However, for this loadout, we're going to change things up a bit by not running with an M4 or recreating an M16A2. Instead, we're going to create a light machine gun build based off ANA documentaries and Afghan training videos. So we're going to equip and kit ourselves with the Bruen Mk9, which in real life is the Belgian counterpart of the M249 saw. But of course we're not going in bare bones with the Bruen, so let's take a look at some attachments that we're going to equip. For our first attachment, we're going to choose the VLK 3x optic. The VLK optical gun sight is of Russian origin, and given the Soviet presence in Afghanistan a few decades ago, it's a known fact that many weapons and equipment were inherited by the locals before the Soviets left the land. So we can take this fact into account with our optical attachment and choose the VLK, which gives us a zoom advantage of 3 times magnification. For our second attachment, we're going to equip the FMJ weapon perk. FMJ or Full Metal Jacket rounds penetrate through cover and vehicles more easily, allowing us to deal extra damage to the enemy who are seeking refuge in nearby town buildings. For our third attachment, we're going to adopt a rear grip, and the grip I've gone for is the stipple grip tape. The stipple grip tape lets us aim down our scope faster, and given the Bruen being a light machine gun, ADS times are already slow by default, so this will help us reduce that time by a bit. For our fourth attachment, we're going to choose the 200 round bullet belt. This long bullet belt will let us lay down continuing gunfire at the Taliban, ensuring no one is left unscathed when they retreat back into the mountains. And finally, for our fifth attachment, we're going to steady our recoil control with the bipod. The bipod helps us out big time by reducing the Bruen's recoil kick whenever we fire crouched or prone, so that's why we'll select this as our fifth and final attachment. So those are going to be our attachments for the Bruen Mk9. Now let's move on to our secondary weapon of choice for this loadout. For our secondary weapon, we're going to choose the RPG-7. Rocket-propelled grenade launchers have seen use in Afghanistan for more than half a century, and the ones that were armed by the Afghan National Army were either inherited from when the Soviets left the country, or from captured weapon caches that belonged to the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. While our primary weapon will deal suppressive fire and damage against enemy reinforcements, our RPG-7 will deal explosive damage to hostile trucks and air vehicles, so that's why we're choosing this as our secondary. The RPG-7 doesn't come with any attachments that we can equip, so let's move straight on to our perks and equipment that we'll be using. For our first tier perk, we're going to choose EOD. The Afghan army wore ballistic vesting whenever they walked on patrols, and this was due to the fear of IEDs planted off-road along farms and other make-do pathways. It's because of IEDs that Afghan soldiers moving across long distances seat in special vehicles known as MRAPs, which help to cushion the detonating impact of an IED that has been buried underneath the roads in between the nearby towns and villages. So to reference this, we'll select the EOD perk to absorb more explosive damage than normal. For our second tier perk, we're going to choose Hardline. Afghan soldiers as young as 16 joined the ANA on the front line to capture or kill extremists inhabiting the country and to protect the citizens of Afghanistan from any further attacks. So to represent this, we'll choose the Hardline perk, which will let us earn our kill streak rewards with 1 less life to be lost. And for our third tier perk, we're going to choose Spotter. Afghan soldiers patrolled around army bases and local towns and villages on the daily. As they carried out their patrol, there were many times where they'd spot someone who seemed a bit sus, and as part of their duties, they walked up and spoke to the person, and investigated them as well as their vehicle, for fear they were assisting the Taliban with intel, or worse still, were Taliban themselves. The Spotter perk references this by granting us the ability to see enemy equipment through walls so we can mark them for our teammates to disable, while we prepare for the hostile presence nearby. So that's why Spotter will be our tier 3 and final perk. Moving on now to our equipment, and for our lethal equipment, we're going to choose the frag grenade. Frag grenades were standard when it came to the Afghan National Army, and they likely used American M72 frags in their kit to be thrown at terrorists taking cover behind walls or inside occupied buildings. So for this reason, we'll simply go with a frag grenade. And for our tactical equipment, we're going to go with a stim shot. From watching a couple of Vice documentaries about the Afghan National Army, they showed us the inside of a few medical field hospitals, where injured soldiers would be taken care of until an ambulance could transport them over to the nearest military hospital, which had the right equipment and resources to help treat serious injuries. We can make use of the stim shot as a sort of anaesthesia that would help numb the pain felt by these men before they were transported, so that's why stim will be our tactical equipment. So now that we've talked about our perks and equipment, it's time to finish off this loadout by taking a look at our field upgrade of choice, and of course our selection of 3 kill streaks. For our field upgrade, we're going to choose stopping power. Stopping power rounds are great when paired with light machine guns, as it not only lets us lay down suppressive gunfire, but also deals more damage in the process, so that's why we're choosing stopping power for our field upgrade. Moving on now to our 3 selected kill streaks, and to begin with our first kill streak, we're going to choose the shield turret. Gunner turrets are typically seen set up on top of vehicles, as the gunners scout out for enemy combatants planning an ambush on the convoy. We can mimic this in game by selecting the shield turret for our first kill streak. For our second kill streak, we're going to choose the cluster strike. The Afghan army used various Soviet mortars like M37s and M1938s to attack terrorist strongholds and push the enemy back from advancing. We can replicate this in modern warfare by equipping the cluster strike, which fires a bombardment of mortars at a laser designated zone to keep the enemy players away from choke points and objectives. And for our third and final kill streak, we're going to choose the infantry assault vehicle. As mentioned before, the ANA drove numerous armoured vehicles around army bases and back and forth between villages. Some of these vehicles included MRAPs, BTRs, amphibious vehicles and tanks. We can generalise these armoured vehicles into one single kill streak under the infantry assault vehicle or IAV. The IAV is a drivable vehicle that comes fitted with a rapid fire cannon and a 50 cal machine gun, letting us and a teammate to punish the enemy with a 2-for-1 special. So that's why the IAV will be our third and final kill streak. Combining our weaponry, perks, equipment, field upgrade and kill streaks, fight for the citizens of Afghanistan, stand tall when everything around you crumbles, and just remember, God is great. So troops, that wraps up my Afghan army loadout video for Modern Warfare. Next time you boot up Modern Warfare multiplayer, definitely give this class setup a try in game and take in the beauty that is the heart of Asia. If you did enjoy this loadout video, then give the video a thumbs up, I would appreciate it a lot, and make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification button as well for more loadouts in the future. If you have any friends who might be interested in this sort of content, then share the video around with them to help give my loadout videos and my channel more widespread exposure. And if you want to see behind the scenes previews of my loadout videos, you can follow me on Twitter at jordanxbrookes for all the latest on there. I've got a few more loadouts for both Cold War and Modern Warfare left to do, and after that, we're straight sailing into the year 2042 for Battlefield 2042. So until the next video, I thank you all for watching, stay true to me troops, and I'll see you in game.
The firestorms began in Central London.
Blackout of communication.